It just wasn't that dope.
Good to go.
Okay, so let's begin. We're already like 10 minutes behind schedule, so I'll just briefly introduce myself. So my name is Utti Hietakala. My background is basically in bodybuilding, other sports as well, but I'm a competitive natural bodybuilder and coach. I've been coaching other athletes as well for over 10 years. And I've been writing for magazines and websites about training and nutrition for, I think, over 10 years now. Can't remember how long exactly, but yeah, that's pretty much probably why I'm here to talk about nutrition for, well, you guys are dancers. That's the situation here. But from my perspective, you're doing what's it called, like street dance or break dance or stuff like that.
Pretty much.
So I only know kind of like what that looks like. That's the extent of it. But just by looking at the kind of stuff you do, you can really tell that it's. I would consider you athletes, because you're doing what's pretty close to like a high intensity interval type training. You're doing short bursts of high energy movement, or maybe a little bit longer bursts of medium energy movement. And you're using your body weight, so there's actually resistance involved and everything. So even though you're not like on the super high end spectrum where you would have the highest intensity of movement, which is like weightlifting and other strength sports or sprinting or whatever, you're definitely not on the other end, which is like Joe Blow sitting on the couch and eating donuts. So in that sense, when I was asked here to talk about nutrition and diet, it's I would approach it from the angle of how to improve training for your types of athletes. And well, I only have so much time, so I'm not going to sell you too much on why nutrition is that important. I'm just going to go along with it as we go. So your sport, I'm going to call it sport. What the hell do you call it yourself? Like hobby or whatever? Yeah. I'm just going to keep calling it sport. It's easier for me. Because in your sport, this might be the only time I actually need this. I'm going to show you the basic energy systems. That's going to clarify a lot. After that, I'm not going to be so technical. I'm going to use 4 different colors. It's going to look cooler. And none of these work. Yeah, this one's good. Okay. So there's energy substrate usage. This would be like how much energy you get on the y-axis, and this is time. Your quickest energy source that your body can use for whatever it does kind of looks like this. It's called the ATP-PC system. Yeah, never mind. It's called the adenosine triphosphate phosphocreatine system. It's basically going to peak in like 2 seconds, and it's going to last for up to 10 seconds or a little bit more. So if you're only going to like decide to jump up in the air as high as you can or sprint for, try to run 100 meters, this is what you're going to be using, which is direct energy stored in your cells as ATP or phosphocreatine. And this is the reason why actually supplementing with creatine actually works for power athletes. But then you have the second energy system, which is going to look like something like this. And that's your glycolysis. And this is your body burning carbohydrates for something up to like 2 minutes. It's gonna start decreasing output after one minute roughly. But this is the area you're probably going to be working in. So you're going to be doing not extreme intensity stuff, but pretty high intensity for up to maybe 1 or 2 minutes at a time. And that's why this is your primary energy system. You're going to be burning carbs for fuel. And then you have the final one, which kind of looks like this, and that's just your aerobic oxidative energy system, which is when your body can actually use oxygen to oxidize both carbs and fat for fuel. And this is the only place where your body can actually use fat for fuel efficiently. So this is like what you're going to be using whenever you're not doing the first two things. So as I'm talking to you, I'm pretty much just using this last one because this is not very intense. And so this thing I think is important for you to understand, because I'm later on going to talk about the importance of carbs for your specific activity or sport. Yeah, anyway, so the basics of nutrition, yeah, you can divide this up in many different ways, but the most convenient one is to look at it from like a technical perspective. What is your diet composed of? And the first thing that I look at is the macronutrients. So pretty much everything, every food you eat is composed of 3 different macronutrients: protein, carbohydrates, and fat. And these actually, then you can calculate, if you know how many grams of protein and carbs and fat you're eating, you can directly calculate how many calories you're getting from that. But so your food, your nutrition acts first as a fuel source. You know, you need energy for doing anything, just standing around, breathing, and especially if you're doing anything harder, like dancing or sprinting or lifting weights, whatever. You're going to need energy for that. But then, so all of these macronutrients, protein, carbs, and fat, they provide that energy. But these 3 macronutrients have pretty different functions in the body, and they're pretty broad spectrum. So first of all, protein. Protein is the primary one in the sense that it is the primary building block of all of our cells in our body. Protein is present in every single cell of your body. And protein is essential in the sense that every single second you live, there are 2, let's say, counterbalancing processes going on in your body. One is the buildup of protein synthesis, where your body takes the protein you eat and it takes the amino acids from there and it sort of incorporates those to, you know, build new tissue. Maybe if you like hurt yourself, it's gonna, you know, heal that wound or whatever. And then on top of that, well, like on the other side of that, you have protein breakdown. And this is also taking place every single second you live. So at the same time, your body is breaking down the tissues. So it's taking apart proteins in your body, in your cells, you know, to maybe use those amino acids for energy, or just because I can't remember the exact number, but I think it's like within every 7 years, every single cell of your body is pretty much renewed. Different tissues have different rates of turnover, like your muscle turns over real quickly because it has a higher metabolic rate of processes and all that. And then your bones, they're pretty much the last ones to, you know, be changed. But because you have these 2 processes, you need protein. It's essential for living. I mean, there's about 6 million people annually die, mostly in Africa, I think, due to protein deficiency. They're not getting enough protein. So, but in the Western countries, in the developed countries, this is not a problem. I mean, it's the requirements for protein, especially for like non-athletic endeavors, they're not that high. But anytime you start doing anything else except just, you know, lying on the couch and watching TV, you're going to increase your protein breakdown. And that increases your need for protein from food. Because protein, unless you get it from food, your body can't make it on its own from, you know, carbohydrates or fat, really. So that's why protein is primary, and you should always just, it's really not super complicated. The main thing is just to get enough protein on a regular basis, and your body is really just, you know, going to take care of the rest. You don't have to go all bodybuilder OCD and, yeah, I need to eat protein every 3.0 hours and, you know, it's going to be 30 to 50 grams. No. That's like, yeah, you can optimize that way, but it's really not necessary, especially if you're doing what you're doing. It's funny that the recommendations for protein intake are I would say they're pretty low for general population. It's about 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. And yeah, for like, well, I'm 100 kilos, so for me, that would be 80 grams per day. And it would be hard for me to eat that little. I mean, I'm going to get it, even if I'm going to try it. Even if I try to eat as little protein as possible, currently it's, yeah, you're not going to be protein deficient in the Western countries. However, that's for, you know, sedentary people. For athletes, the harder you train, the more you have protein breakdown, the more you need it. And the highest need for protein is essentially for like ultra endurance athletes, people doing crazy shit like ultra marathons or triathlons or stuff like that. And then obviously people training very hard with weights. But even those people, even those populations don't need, I don't know, more than maybe 2 or 3 grams per kilogram. And bodybuilders used to, I mean, I used to eat 4 grams per kilogram, like 400 grams a day. But that's just, you know, bodybuilders try everything out and then they find out what works and what doesn't. But for you kind of fall in between those two extreme ends. You're not going to need as much as like ultra marathon runners or bodybuilders, but you are going to need more than, you know, Joe Blow from the street who just eats donuts and plays Xbox or whatever. So basically what I would recommend for any of you, if you ever want to, you know, break it down and calculate it, would be up to, I would say 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight. If you get that, you will never like have to wonder if you're getting enough protein. I would stay above 1 gram per kilogram of body weight. So if you weigh 60 kilos, that will be 60 grams per day. But that's kind of a low end because there's kind of this good, you don't want to be exactly like teetering on the low end there. You want to be a little bit above the low end so that you make sure that you're getting actually enough protein and you make sure of that. Because if you get too much, if you don't get enough protein, if you're deficient, then you're going to have problems. But even if you go to like 1.5 grams per kilogram, which for a 60 kilo person would be 90 grams per day, it's still a long way before you're ever going to reach a point where you're getting like too much protein. So I would kind of err on the side of caution there and get maybe 1.2 to 1.5 grams per kilogram. But yeah, maybe you know, 1 day or 2 days, you know, at some point in the future, just, you know, plot out how much protein you're actually eating a day, and you can just kind of get a ballpark figure. But I'm pretty sure most of you are okay with that. Then the second thing, second macronutrient is fats, actually. And fats are also essential for human life because there's a group of fats called essential fatty acids, which your body absolutely needs to function and be healthy. And you can't, just like proteins, essential amino acids, your body can't actually synthesize those essential fatty acids on its own. So you need those as well from the diet. But those are basically, wait a second, it's alpha-linolenic acid and linolenic acid. Never mind about that. Just make sure that you're eating some kinds of natural sources of unsaturated fats. So saturated fat in itself is not essential. You can kind of do without it. You're going to be better if you eat some of it. But saturated fat intake is like, you're going to get it no matter what you eat, unless all you eat is like rice and, you know, dried chicken or something like that. So it's the main thing with essential fatty acid intake is to kind of like, if you're having olive oil or canola oil or maybe avocados or nuts and seeds and stuff like that, you pretty much have your bases covered. And the one thing which is the most important there are the omega-3 fatty acids. And that's why I'm pretty sure most of you have at least seen or heard about fish oil supplements, because those are the most concentrated forms of EPA and DHA. EPA and DHA are the, maybe I'm getting a little too technical here, I should probably move forward, but EPA and DHA, which is really mostly present in fish oil. For example, your brain tissue is pretty highly composed of those. And you can like go on PubMed or Medline and search for almost any ailment the human body can have, and you're going to have positive effects if you're supplementing with EPA and DHA, aka fish oils. So it's like this almost a magic bullet. If you're deficient in EPA and DHA, you're going to notice, and as soon as you correct that deficiency, pretty much everything in your body is going to improve. So fish oil supplements, I do strongly recommend them. So it's like, it's one of the 3 groups of supplementation that even Harvard Medical School recommends for every single person on this planet. But yeah, let's go forward with the other things. So the last, but in your case, probably a practically pretty important macronutrient group is carbohydrates. And I'm not sure if you're like, there's a lot of trends in diets and fads and stuff, and you know, avoiding carbs is definitely it's always been one of them. And that's all fine if you're super sedentary. If you're really not doing any physical activity, avoiding carbs is actually not a bad idea to an extent. But as soon as you start doing anything physically active, and especially because you're doing like pretty high energy stuff, pretty rapid movements, that's when you get into this, you know, you're going to have to be using carbs for fuel for that, because your body can't burn fat quickly enough to power, you know, short bursts of high energy movement. So if you're going to try to do what you're doing here, maybe eating like a ketogenic 0 carb diet, well, yeah, you can do that and you can actually live on that, but you're going to seriously compromise your performance. You're going to feel slower. You're not going to have as much energy for that. So if you want to be as good as you can in this thing you're doing, carbs you should not be afraid of. And carbs in themselves, your body can use them in 2 optimal ways. The inoptimal way is that, you know, you just eat a bunch of excessive carbs, and then at some point you turn them into fat, and then, you know, stored fat, and then your body later on maybe uses that fat. But the 2 optimal ways your body can use carbohydrates is directly after you've eaten a meal with carbohydrates, then your blood sugar rises. And then you do some kind of activity that actually burns those carbs for fuel. So for example, eating some carbs before you come here and, you know, do your dancing, that's always a good idea, because you're going to be needing those carbs for energy. The second way your body can use carbs is indirectly, because it has a limited storage capacity for direct carbs called glycogen. So it's mostly in your muscles. Your liver can store a bit of glycogen, but most of the glycogen in a human body is stored in your muscles. And this, actually, the larger your muscles, the more you can store, but that's beside the point. So the thing is, it's a limited capacity to store them. So at the point where if you're eating a shit ton of carbs, like day in, day out, like, and you're not really training, you're going to top out your muscle glycogen stores in a day or 2. And then if you continue eating carbs on top of that, then you no longer have like a direct storage unit for those. And that's when your body is going to start to maybe, you know, accumulate fat tissue from eating carbs. That's when you're eating useless carbs, let's put it that way. But if on a regular basis you're using those stores, which you're doing here, because you're utilizing this glycolytic pathway, you're using carbs for energy, you're constantly kind of, you know, tapping into those stores of carbohydrate, and then you need to replenish that. And you do that by eating carbs. So seriously, don't be afraid of carbs. And just a quick side note on sugar. I mean, sugar in itself is not evil. in any like traditional sense of the word. That, for example, if you come here and you haven't eaten in a few hours, and you know you're going to be performing activity that burns carbs, it's actually okay to have some sugar before it, because you're going to be just using that for fuel. And if you put sugar in part of like a mixed meal is something that contains all of these macronutrients: protein, carbohydrate, and fat, and preferably also like fiber. So if you have all of these components mixed in a meal, they can come from like one, I don't know, mixture or soup or something of different foods, or you can just combine different foods where you get these macronutrients. It doesn't matter, because if you eat it like at one sitting, it's all going to mix in your stomach. So it doesn't really like kill you if you add some sugar on top of a meal that otherwise is high in protein, maybe fiber, maybe fats. The sugar in itself, I mean, sugar is, you're told to avoid sugar mostly because if you only eat sugary foods, like, I don't know, like soda, like Pepsi or something, it has nothing else but sugar usually in it. It has no vitamins, it has no micronutrients, it has no other nutrients. And so that's like, it's like an indirect negative of it. But sugar in itself, when you need it, it's really not evil. It's just energy. So when you combine all of these macronutrients, like I said, you can actually get energy from these. It's calories. So calories actually just determines, you're going to be burning calories even if you're in a coma. You have a basal metabolic rate, which your body is going to be burning a certain amount of calories even if you're like, doing nothing, just breathing and living and lying down. You're going to be burning a certain amount of calories, and everything you do on top of that is going to burn more calories. And for example, the stuff you do, it's actually, especially if you do it like really with rapid movements and you're using your body weight, maybe supporting it with your arms and hands and whatnot, just not your legs, it's pretty metabolic in nature. It's going to elevate your metabolic rate for some time after you've even done that. So you're probably, would I be correct if I were to assume that not a lot of people here doing this stuff have like a weight control problem? I mean, it's like I don't see any overweight people here really. So that's usually the problem of the sedentary everyday person. They're going to be trying to lose weight and whatnot, so they need to watch carbs and whatnot. But for you, it's the importance of nutrition and getting in enough calories is probably more important, because when you're not eating enough calories, the first thing that's going to happen is you're just not going to perform as well. You're not going to recover as well. Your weight actually might not move because your body can adapt to different calorie intakes pretty well within like a certain area. Let's say that some person has like a combined, when you combine his or her BMR, basal metabolic rate, and everything they burn throughout the day, let's say they're burning on average 3,000 calories. Their weight is probably not going to move upward or downward unless they go several hundred calories above or below 3,000. They're not going to start losing weight if they eat like 2,999 calories, because there's like this area there where your body can still adapt. But if you want to recover as quickly as possible from your workouts, you want to be at least like not slowing down your metabolism by eating a little less than what your body is burning. You want to be eating as much as you're burning, maybe even a little bit more, because your body can also adapt to the other end of it. So if you're going to be eating maybe 3,005 calories, that doesn't mean you're going to start gaining weight. It's probably going to take like 200 calories above 3,000. So that's one of the reasons why in a performance sport, where recovery is pretty important too, it's I would always err on the side of eating a little bit more until you actually start noticing that, fuck, I'm getting maybe gaining weight. And if that's not what you want, then you kind of pull back what you're eating. But also, unless you're specifically trying to lose weight, that's like a topic on its own, I'm not going to touch that. So I would encourage you to try maybe eat like slightly more than you're eating right now, and see if that, if you recover better from that, or if your body weight rises or whatnot, because it's kind of, you have to find what calorie amounts or food amounts work for you. And by the way, I'm really not suggesting that you count your calories. I'm just using the term calories here because that is really what we're talking about. We're talking about energy intake. But it's unnecessary to be so OCD like bodybuilders who, they count every single fucking gram of everything they eat over like 20 years. That's just not necessary. Just, if you have your basic diet, just try to maybe eat, slightly more of a certain food or something. Or if, you start gaining weight, then pull that back. That's all I'm saying. Now, then there's also micronutrients. So far, I talked only about the major energy benefits, energy requirements, and functions of the macronutrients. And by the way, protein is it's sort of the building block macronutrient. And even though it's technically not as clear cut, you can always kind of generally classify carbohydrates and fats as mostly energy macronutrients. You use those primarily for energy, but still they have lots of other vital functions in the body, especially fats. And in your case, what you're doing, carbohydrates. So all kinds of kooky diets where you go to one extreme end, where you eliminate all carbs and go full keto, or you do like a 1980s hardcore bodybuilder diet where you eat zero fat and like just nothing but protein. All these extreme ends usually are not very good for the human body. I mean, some of these things you can do if you really know what you're doing in a way that's not harmful. But for most people, you should try to eat a balanced diet, even athletes. It's just that, what is balanced? I mean, you can sort of emphasize carbs or you can emphasize fats. In your case, I would say, eat a balanced diet with sufficient protein, sufficient fats, and then, don't be afraid of eating carbs, because you're going to be expending a lot of those. And just, adjust based on how much carbs you're actually burning by, coming here. But the other thing is micronutrients. And this is kind of micronutrients are your vitamins and minerals, and even like phytonutrients, all these really small, tiny stuff that, is essential to your health. The thing is, traditionally, you've all been encouraged to eat a lot of vegetables and fruit and, stuff like that to get your vitamins and minerals, but that shit doesn't work anymore. It may have worked 50 years ago when there were like 3 billion people less in the world, and we weren't doing as much like artificial agricultural practices and, enhanced crops or whatever. But nowadays, there's just too much soil depletion, soil erosion. And the crops they're growing today, they're usually modified with certain traits other than nutritional value in mind. They just want to make them grow quicker or something. Even that in itself, depletes the soil. So if you were to eat like a carrot today and see how much vitamins and minerals you're going to get from that, it's going to be a lot less than if you were eating a carrot 50 years ago. So even though it's good, and for another reason, really, I would say essential to eat every day a good amount of fresh fruits and vegetables, it's not for the vitamins and minerals to, I mean, you can get some from there, but really all you need to do is take a multivitamin and mineral supplement. Because, well, actually you do need to take that, because it's going to be super, super hard to not be deficient, at least in some way deficient in one vitamin or mineral if you're not going to be supplementing with a multivitamin or mineral. And that's due to soil erosion. I mean, you just can't eat enough natural foods these days to cover all your bases just with that. The other reason why you should eat fresh, unprocessed foods, and especially your fresh vegetables and fruit, is actually pH balance. So most of the other stuff you eat, other than vegetables and fruit, is acidic in pH. Like meat and mostly all your protein sources and even grains, they're usually acidic. And if all you eat is acidic, your body still needs to maintain pH balance in itself, and it can do that. It's not like you're gonna go all acidic unless you eat an alkaline diet, because your body is capable of adjusting its own pH. The thing is, if it has to adjust its own pH, it's gonna be a stressor. It's gonna have to break down muscle and even bone to take alkaline components from there to offset the acidity in your diet. So yeah, it's not necessary per se, for life to eat alkaline foods, but it's really smart to do that. You don't want to stress your body out unnecessarily by not eating those alkaline foods to counterbalance all the acidic foods you're eating. So whatever you're going to look at, you have like tables of alkaline versus acidic foods. It's always the fresh vegetables, the fresh fruit that's the most alkaline, and pretty much all the other stuff is on the acidic side of things. So it's important to every day, I think, on every meal if you can, to have at least a little bit of like veggies or fruit. And that's one of the reasons. Of course, you're gonna get like additional vitamins and phytonutrients from those, but I don't think that's the primary reason you should be eating those. Plus, they also keep you fuller. They keep the hunger away a lot longer than just eating like a Pop-Tart or I don't know, some candy bar or something. And yeah, so that's the one thing. Also, even not related to the alkaline foods, just overall, I think if there was only one thing I could tell you here today about diet, is to try to eat as little processed foods as possible. Try to eat actual whole foods that are unprocessed, fresh foods. Meaning, if you have to like buy the food in a cardboard box and it has a list of ingredients that's like 20 pages long, that's probably not going to be very unprocessed. It's going to be processed to all hell and back. And it's that's like one of the really simple ways to find out what you should be eating or not. What's really unprocessed? What's whole foods? Well, fruit, vegetables, meat, eggs, even dairy. Even dairy is minimally processed. You have like nuts, grains, yeah, rice and oatmeal and all that stuff. Whenever you get to like something where when the original raw food has gone through a lot of processes to end up as a bread or a donut or whatever, that's when usually you lose much of the nutritional value, and it also changes the acidity. It makes it usually more acidic. It's just it's less nutrition, usually more calories, and yeah. So the one thing that everybody can do to instantly make their diet more healthy and beneficial for their body is to sort of shift. I mean, you don't have to completely cut out processed food. I love fucking donuts and ice cream and stuff like that. But just don't base your entire diet around that crap. Instead, like try to mostly eat the fresh, unprocessed foods as much as you can, and then every now and then eat something crappy. Or if you want to eat crappy, eat like, yeah, we have some products like snacks. Those are like in between thing there. Itse asiassa noin pystyy pistämään varmaan kiertoa tuosta.
Joo, ilman muuta.
So there's like I can't even remember. There's like I don't know. Yeah, those are like superfood bars for most of those, and then the bottom ones are protein bars, which are really delicious from Fast. Anyway, those are like examples of what's trending nowadays. Is that people still need snacks because they can't always eat whole food meals. You know, they're on the go or something. But people are also finding out that, you know, maybe I don't want to eat McDonald's or, you know, Mars or Snickers bars. So there's actually slightly better choices because even those are processed in the sense that, you know, they've combined ingredients. They're still mostly just raw ingredients put together. And so there's minimal processing in the sense that processing makes your food worse. And so those are just examples of slightly healthier snacks. Anyway, I'm not going to talk too much about those because I have actual stuff here. Yeah. So one word about, I would say, essential supplementation, which is kind of an oxymoron, I think. But anyway, I believe Harvard Medical School, at least 2 years ago, I'm not sure if they've updated their recommendations, but they recommended that every single human being would supplement at least 3 things. And we already talked about the multivitamin and mineral, because nowadays you can't, you know, get all your bases covered just by eating like organic lettuce and tomato or whatever. You are much better off by having an insurance against deficiencies by having that multivitamin. The second thing is fish oil, which I already also talked about. So having like an insured source of EPA and DHA, which are the most important essential fatty acids daily, that's huge for everyone, really. Unless you're eating like a ton of fatty fish every day, that's going to do the same thing, but most people aren't. So, you know, use a fish oil supplements or some kind of other omega-3 supplement. And the third one is actually vitamin D3, vitamin D. And that's because unless you're living in like, well, Africa or Miami or somewhere where you can go to the beach in a bathing suit every single day of the year and, you know, lie around in the sun for at least, I don't know, 20 to 30 minutes every day, you're probably deficient in vitamin D, especially here in Finland because, you know, we get no sun, we just get snow and rain. So vitamin D, it's one of the reasons because, you know, the governmental authorities have known that, you know, it's an epidemic deficiency among populations. That's why they've added it to milk for decades, I think. And it's still not enough. People are still deficient in it. So really just one of the 3 major things is to get like a good vitamin D3 supplement. Okay, then we can actually get to, you know, how you're going to eat in practice. So you're going to eat meals, obviously. And I would count a meal as a mixed meal where there's a base of protein in it. So if you're going to eat, like, I would suggest 3 meals a day is actually pretty good if you have some snacks on top of that. There's no need to eat more meals than that, even though bodybuilders always do. But it's 3 meals spaced out pretty evenly. It's actually a really, really, really good starting point. You can have a snack if you eat breakfast in the morning, then lunch during the day, and dinner before you go to bed, and then you have like your workout here somewhere in between. You can just have a snack before this, and that, for example, would be, in my mind, a pretty okay routine dietarily. But the meals themselves should always contain at least like a protein base. So good sources of protein, obviously meat, fish, chicken, eggs, dairy products that are high in protein, like cottage cheese or quark, maitorahka. Even protein supplements. Any vegans or vegetarians here? Okay, well, life is a lot harder for you. Sorry. So you actually need to pay a lot more attention to the protein sources you're using, because, and just food in general. I mean, people might not know it, but vegans are in a higher risk of deficiencies than other people who actually eat all foods. And that's just because, by definition, you're limiting your food variety. So especially protein for you guys is something where not a lot of strictly plant-based foods are what's called complete protein sources. So you actually have to combine different protein sources to get all the amino acids your body requires. So examples are like beans and rice, because one is deficient in like certain amino acids, the other one is in others, but when you combine them, you get all you need. And also for vegans, it's that's probably the one group that even if you're not training or something, I would think a protein supplement like soy protein powder or something would actually benefit you. But if you're covering your bases otherwise, and you're getting protein from varied sources, yeah. But yeah, life is harder for you. Now, when you have your protein base on your meal, actually for women, there is the sufficient amount to stimulate protein synthesis, and that in my mind makes it like a complete meal. It's roughly 20 grams of protein a meal. That's like one serving of quark, yksi maitorahka, for example. And for males, it's slightly more. It's more in the vicinity of 30 grams, so maybe 1.5 servings of quark or something like that. But anyway, a good chunk of protein, maybe 3 or 4 times a day. Then also on those meals, you want to have your fresh fruit or vegetables or both. I mean, those are the food groups that you generally can't really eat too much of. Maybe some fruit like bananas, which, well, they're really starchy and they don't provide that much micronutrients. But other fruits like maybe apples and, for example, berries are very good. Those are, and especially vegetables, fresh vegetables, it's hard to overeat those. I mean, you're going to get full and satiated and not hungry way before you're ever going to eat like too much. So you never really need to like limit those, I would say. Then on top of those two bases, which is protein and your fresh veggies and fruit, you want to have usually at least one energy macronutrient source. So carbs, fat, or maybe even both. The only thing that I wouldn't do is have like a gigantic mega dose of both carbs and fat in the same meal. That's just redundant. That's just stupid. It's like you go eat, I don't know, 3 cheeseburgers and 3 bags of candy at one sitting or something like that. Your body doesn't need that. And when you're eating really, really, really large meals, your body can hormonally and enzymatically utilize the nutrients much better if you're focusing mostly on either carbs or fats, but not both. When you're eating smaller meals, then you can have even like equal amounts of both. But yeah, usually have their, I mean, salad is like something if you have a salad with nothing other than maybe the protein source, like a chicken salad without any, I don't know, without fruit, without olive oil or salad dressing, that's something that's stuff that bodybuilders may have to eat when they're really trying to get lean and they can't have any energy. But that's an incomplete meal. You usually need an energy source there. So either fat or carbs or a little bit of both. And the one thing about a mixed meal is that if you eat carbs on their own, that's going to spike your blood sugar really fast, and then you're going to crash really fast, and you're going to be hungry in like 30 minutes afterwards. If you add fats, some amount of fat to your carbs, that's a little bit better already, because the fats are going to slow down the glycemic effect of those carbs. Your blood sugar is not going to rise as quickly, and it's going to, stay more stable for a little bit longer, but you're still going to crash maybe after an hour or so. The best type of a meal is a mixed meal which contains all of these plus protein. Protein is key here, because when you have all three macronutrients in a meal, that is when it's actually going to, provide you with a stable level of blood sugar, stable level of energy. It's going to stave off hunger for several hours, and that's what you want from food. So even like simple hacks that you can do is, if you only have, let's say, a crappy like a candy bar or a Snickers bar or something like that, that's just sugar, which is carbs, and fats. But if you have like a protein source with that, remember, when you eat them at the same time, they're all going to mix in your stomach. You technically just ate kind of like a mixed meal. So just by adding protein to those carbs and fats, you make the meal much more beneficial, or it's going to be much more efficient in staving off hunger and keeping you full than just eating the carbs and the fats. So that's why, for example, protein bars work better than regular candy bars. And then one key thing, have variety in your diet. Don't always eat the same fucking things. It's like, I know bodybuilders and athletes who are given a diet like a piece of paper. They're really usually just tend to stick to that every single day for 6 months or so. And if you always eat the same things day in, day out, you're in a much higher risk of some deficiency than someone who kind of varies their diet. Eats slightly different foods every day, or at least has the minimum amount of variety you want is, eat completely different meals. Like in the morning, maybe eat oatmeal and eggs. Then the next meal, maybe chicken and rice and broccoli or something. And then the third meal, maybe potatoes and meat and that kind of stuff, instead of every single meal just chicken and rice. So it's the variety between meals and between your days, or just rotating different food sources. That's one of the best ways to make sure that you're in the long run not going to be running into deficiencies. And it's also much more fun. You're not going to get bored of eating the same shit every day. So yeah, those are pretty much my main topics, and I have no time left. So maybe a word or two about simple things that are super important. Water and fluid intake, hydration. I mean, people don't really think about it, but having just enough water and hydrating your body, it's pretty fucking essential. It's, even a slight amount of dehydration will immediately impair performance. And you can notice that immediately. Now, the thing is that all this crap about, you have to drink pure water and coffee doesn't count, that's bullshit. It's every single thing that contains water, aka fluid, is going to count towards you being more hydrated. Obviously, if you drink pure water, it's going to hydrate you more effectively than drinking 100 espressos or something, because then you're getting so much caffeine, which sort of counteracts some of that water, but it's still going to be water in there. And the optimal way, this is kind of technical, you want to drink most of your water and your fluid between your meals, not with your meals. So you don't have to, forego all fluid, all water, all drinks with your meals, because it's a lot easier, to chew food if you can sip on water or something. But you should kind of limit it there, and that's just for better digestion. Because when you eat, your body starts to break down the food in your stomach by using stomach acid and digestive enzymes and stuff like that. If you pour like a liter of water on there, it's going to dilute those digestive enzymes and stomach acids, and your body's going to sort of notice that, and it's going to pump more acid and more digestive enzymes in there, and that can be a stressor on it. So just drink a little bit with your meals, and then between meals drink a lot more. That's one really good way to do it. And what I have left here is salt intake. When you're doing glycolytic activities like you're doing, you can be afraid of carbs, but you also can be super afraid of salt, just your regular sodium, natrium, because that is required. If you eat like 0 sodium or really low sodium, your body can't actually shuttle those carbs into your muscle stores. It's technically impossible. Plus, whenever you're doing any kind of activity, muscle contractions, you're moving your body, you're actually expending electrolytes doing that. You're expending, especially sodium, doing that. When you're sweating, when you're drinking water, you're diluting your body with electrolytes. So unless you're one of the genetically predisposed people, which is I think like 15% of the population, those are like the super sensitive people to salt, and they will know it. They will know it even before they've come here, because they will always have had high blood pressure. Those people need to be careful with their salt intake. But everybody else will, if you increase your salt intake, maybe like for 2 days you might feel a transient increase in blood pressure. After that, your body adjusts. And having too little salt is actually pretty bad for your performance and even a lot of processes in your body. And you want to make sure that you have enough. Don't go eating like 50 grams of salt every day like I do. I actually do. But I know I can take it. So that was one thing. And I'm not going to talk about specific nutrients because I have no time left. But the one thing that I've seen these figures in many different places. The 2 minerals or 2 micronutrients that 99% of all athletes are deficient in are zinc and magnesium. And that's because all kind of stress depletes those 2 minerals, especially hard training and all that. Plus, those 2 are actually, especially magnesium, is usually poorly absorbed. So the remedy for that is to actually supplement with zinc and especially magnesium. And by the way, if you supplement with magnesium, don't buy the regular stuff on the store shelf, because that's magnesium oxide. And magnesium oxide is really cheap, and that's why everybody sells it, but it doesn't work. It's the only one that doesn't work, and that's what everybody sells because it's so cheap to make. It's like the absorption percentage of oxide is, I think, 4%. So when you're going to get a magnesium oxide, actually, it's funny because if you go to a hospital or something, they will never use magnesium oxide for magnesium deficiency. They will use it for a laxative effect. It'll make you poop. So, but it's not good for magnesium. You can get any other type of magnesium. For example, a magnesium citrate. It's pretty cheap and it actually absorbs well. So those are the 2 things that I would also supplement with. So yeah. Also, I had like some suggestions about joint aids and stuff, because I would imagine a lot of you have problems with connective tissues, tendons and stuff. Use gelatin. Seriously, use Jello, because that's hydrolyzed collagen. And hydrolyzed collagen is actually super beneficial for especially tendons, also skin, hair, nails, all that stuff. It can help you sleep better because it's pretty high in glycine, but that's like a side point. Just like there's been clinical studies where even moderate arthritis has been like significantly relieved just by taking gelatin, which is Jello. And in the stores, what I buy is liivatajaoho, gelatin powder. It's really cheap. You mix it with water, maybe put some Fun Light on it, and you make a Jello, and it tastes good. And it's really beneficial for most of your connective tissues. It's type 1 and 3 collagen. So the only type of collagen that's not present there is type 2, and that's what you have in your cartilage. But tendons and skin and hair and nails, all that good stuff. That's a really easy hack. Okay, but now I'm out of time, so thank you.
Hyvä. Kiitokset Tutti. Tosiaan Kokovi oli yksi mahdollistajassa tälle, eli tuosta voi maistiaisia ottaa sitten messiin ja päästetään proteiinipatukoita kanssa.
Kuva, niin meikäähän tonne etualalle kaikki posse-kuvaan.
Kyllä, posse-kuva, ehdottomasti.
Ja sitten tullaan ottaa sen jälkeen täällä snacksit messiin. Vai Kokovi ja päälle. No niin.